Hello and welcome to another edition of Empathy at the Table. I'm delighted, and I mean delighted, to invite our next guest onto the show. Her name is Julia Ewert, and she is a sales and negotiation supremo. She literally burst on the scene over the last few months, and she's written a book, she's an author, she's a trainer, an expert in negotiation. So we're going to have a real deep dive into Julia's experience, and I'd like to welcome you to Empathy at the Table, Julia. Welcome.
Thanks, Tony. That's a very generous introduction. Thank you.
Well, you've earned it. I've been following you for a while. It was like one day you weren't there on my feed, and the next day, you were all over the place and fantastic. And I followed you on your road trip. I followed you. I've just followed you and done a deep dive into who you are, and I'd really like to bring some of your experience to our audience. And I'd like to kick off by the first question is: so you're a sales strategist, a professional negotiator. Is this something that you have kind of tripped into, or was this something you always wanted to become, a professional sales negotiator?
Well, Tony, my corporate experience when I worked corporate for a couple of decades was in leading sales teams. And I left the corporate world probably about 8 years ago now. And I had a couple of kids. And then I started my business about 6 years ago. And when I started this business, I was doing sales coaching and sales training and sales mentoring. And I realized it wasn't a great business model for a couple of reasons. I realized I was always hustling for the next workshop. I realized that workshops don't really solve the problem. They don't really get enough time to actually fix things. It's a bit like putting a Band-Aid on a severed limb. And I also noticed that what was missing from this space was people learning negotiation skills, because sales is only one part of it. Yeah. The negotiation skills is also very important. So I fumbled my way, as most people do in business. When they start out, they go through the I can help anyone and everyone phase. And we all know that's a terrible idea. So I went through that phase as well, just like everybody else. And then I probably landed on my thing, I reckon about a good 3-4 years ago, and I've never looked back. So now I teach a repeatable sales and negotiation process that's customized to our clients, where businesses can convert more qualified contracts, increase their margins, and win more negotiation conversations.
Fantastic. So I think we both know that negotiation tends to get a bad rap. When people hear the word negotiation, you can see their eyes rolling, and it tends to bring out, I don't know, I wouldn't say the worst in people, but it doesn't bring out the best. What kind of experiences have you had in trying to change that narrative?
It's very misunderstood. And even my company statement, the first line I talk about in my company statement is that we stand out in a mistrusted and a misunderstood industry. So people very much misunderstand selling and negotiating as different disciplines. They also misunderstand how to apply these, and many people have a very poor idea of what negotiating is. So even if we're just talking about negotiating for a moment, Tony, people think it's all about finding leverage and strong arming people, and you have to have conflict and you must be angry. And well, my response would be, for anyone that's in a negotiation that feels that way, they're doing it wrong.
Very good. And how do you define the two strands when you separate them out, sales and negotiation? Yeah.
So simply by definition, selling is just an exchange of goods or services for some kind of currency, right? And so sales is more transactional. It's more about me and the thing that I actually want to sell. So if selling is more transactional, negotiating is more tactical. Selling is about me, negotiating is about us. It's about the details required to actually make agreement. And so by definition, negotiating is a discussion aimed at reaching agreement. And so when I talk about helping our clients to convert more contracts of their own, the selling component of the conversation everyone should be having with a potential new prospect should be a very, very small part of the conversation. Most of the time, we're negotiating, which is about asking good questions, listening, playing back what we've heard to make sure we've understood. There are many components in negotiating. They're far more complex than what it is in sales. Sales is just more transactional.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing you saying is it's sales. You can buy something off Amazon, right? That's a sale. Amazon, but it's the element of relationship, right? When you say listening and asking good questions, it's building relationships. So would you then say the focus in negotiation is on the relationship with the entity?
Yes, it's the relationship certainly matters. And even a part of that, to go even further, the part of the relationship that really matters is what we call intimacy. Intimacy is one of the components on an equation to actually measure trust. And so the intimacy is simply, how do we connect with someone else? What do we have in common? Do we have kids the same age? Do we grow up in the same city? Do we both love spicy food? Are we watching the same Netflix show? Do we get frustrated by the same elements in our industry? So the intimacy is created by what we have in common with people. It's that likability factor. So that's extremely important when creating relationships. And why it's important is because people are more likely to buy from people they like, and people are more likely to agree with people they like.
Fantastic. So you said like intimacy, trust, you mentioned frustration, likability, these are all emotions. And I'm forever on a if you like, on a campaign to let people know that emotions play such a huge part in the negotiation process. And yet time and time I do come up against people who say, well, wait a minute, we're executives, we're salespeople, we don't talk negotiation. Do you come up against this type of kind of request for when you do your trainings?
So I'll go back and comment on the empathy part of it, Tony. So I also hear lots of people say to me, "Oh, we shouldn't, use our emotions, and we should, that old adage, leave your emotions at the door." No, bring them in.
That's right. That's
Bring
right.
them in. Talk about them. Every single one of us, every decision we make in a day, from what pajamas we wear, what toothpaste we like to use, how we get to work, what we eat for dinner, every decision we make has an emotional background to it. So these are very welcome in negotiation and sales conversations.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's useful. The hardest people to negotiate with are those that give us nothing. But I would also suggest on the other side of that if you're talking with somebody and they're giving you nothing, then that's on you, not on them. We need to be asking better questions or creating a safe space for people to share what's important to them.
Very good. So I heard that you're a gymnast, right? And
No, I'm a has-been and still a wannabe at 46 years old.
no, you are a gymnast. I've seen you bouncing up and down on a trampoline and jumping. So listen, you're a gymnast. And one thing I heard that you say, which I absolutely loved, is in gymnastics, one of the things that you learned was how to fall without hurting yourself. And you related that really beautifully to the way, right, when it comes to negotiation, right, not being afraid to fail, right, taking that fear of failure away. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, the reason I shared that story, firstly, gymnastics is a very dangerous sport. And I coached for a long time when I was much younger. I'm 46 now, so I coached when I was in my early 20s. And so these kids are doing some pretty dangerous stuff, and they will fall more times than they land when they're learning new tricks. So we teach them and we learn to fall safely. And we can relate this to the negotiation world. And why I talked about this is because we need to practice more times to get our reps up. We're not always going to land the technique or the skill. We're not always going to be in a negotiation, Tony, and we're not always going to nail it and feel like we've conquered. So there are parts we need to make sure that we're practicing every single day in a million different ways. I ran a client session today with a relatively new client, and they will get sick of hearing me say, these are not special occasion skills. These are everyday skills. Every time you're talking to a human, you can be using negotiation skills.
Yeah.
These are skills and techniques. As you know, what's important to you as well, Tony, is great communication skills. That's all negotiation skills are. We just supercharge them a bit when we call them negotiation skills.
Yeah. And so what do you say to people who see negotiation as a zero-sum game and who just seem to use tactics and specific manipulative approaches to the world of negotiation. I mean, we do come across these people, and I think Hollywood and and the media have portrayed negotiation really as people like that. So these people do exist, and these tactics do exist. What do you say when you come up against people like this?
Yeah, and this is similar for the whole we should meet in the middle type thing, and we should just, if I want to pay $50 and you want to pay $100, we pay $75. I think this is a terrible approach. So what we should be doing is we have to be very clear on what the goal is that we want to achieve. I was, even today, a couple of hours ago, I've been negotiating with someone for some services for my own business, and they gave me a certain fee. And so I renegotiated that fee, but I also offered something in return of value. And so when they originally gave me their terms, they gave me a quote for the work that I requested. I was not going to pay that much. But I know it's not about just, it has to be two-sided. So I gave a different amount that I was prepared to pay. They also shared with me what their terms were in terms of a deposit. So I actually said to them that's actually outside of my budget, but I would like to work with you. I'm not questioning your value. I'm not questioning your expertise. It's simply a matter that this is outside my budget for the year because my budgets have already been set. So I said to them in this email, if you're not against it, I would like to offer, I have this amount that I'm willing to pay. If you're happy to accept that, I will increase the deposit. So I will put an extra 50% on the deposit, and I'll pay the total amount within 7 days of the due date. You'll never have to chase me. Plus, I said, if you find it of value, if we do a great project together on this work, I will provide you a written and video testimonial. And I said, what do you think about this? And so my email was written in a way of, hey, I've got some thoughts on this. I'm open to your views as well. And they just replied and said, yes, I can make that work. So
that's great.
It's just about, it's not about the whole, let's just meet in the middle, or I'm going to strong arm, or the take it or leave it. That's not a thing. It is about finding ways that you can add value. And so I gave them, and I said, look, if you find it of value, I could also do these things. Pay your higher deposit, I'll do a video or a written testimonial, and I'll pay you in full within 7 days. I said, if that's a value, I'm happy to put that on the table. And they were happy to accept.
I mean, just talking to you, it seems that your approach is kind of, it's friendly, it's approachable, it's creative, and who wouldn't want to engage, in a negotiation with somebody like that? And so
I'll tell you who, Tony, because this is quite funny. So on occasion, I renegotiate most services that quote me. So I'll tell you who doesn't want to. It's when it's not unusual someone replies and says something like, oh, I feel like you're strong-arming me because you're a negotiator, and oh gosh, I don't know what to do from here. And they kind of are saying it a bit tongue-in-cheek, but I know they're a bit scared. And I reply, this normally happens over email when I'm renegotiating these services or products, and I reassure them and I say, no, there's no strong-arming here at all. And I assure them and I say, yes, I am looking to find a way that I can work with you. That budget that you provided me is not going to work for me, but I am also going to see if I can provide you some value in return. But you don't have to accept. I'm also not that powerful that I can make anyone buy from me, or I'm not that powerful. So what I share with people when I'm in this exact example, people that don't like to negotiate, is they feel like, and it comes back to what you said before about being misunderstood, they feel like I'm going to say something like, well, our services, Julia, are $10,000 for what you need. And Julia's going to come back and say, I'll give you $2,000. Well, that's not how it works. That's not a negotiation, that's haggling.
Yeah,
and that's not the same thing. So when we can do it well, it should feel like we're having a really collaborative conversation. It should feel that everyone's words matter.
So when you walk into a company and you say, right, okay, I'm going to help with your team, I'm going to work with you and help you build your negotiation skills, sales skills. Do you have any strict KPIs? Do you take a look at what sales is like now and then have a look at what sales will be like? Do you get involved in that level of detail with your clients?
Yeah, the work that we do with clients is a 12-month engagement. So we take a snapshot of where they are before we begin so that we can measure the results and show them improvement.
Perfect. So that's somebody who walks their talk, right? That's not somebody who's just flowing in and just kind of doing a 1 day or half day workshop and then disappears. I mean, you're really putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And do you have a specific area of sales that you really like, or is it just any area of sales for you?
So we tend not to work with companies who have sales teams. We are working with people who are the professional. And what our clients have in common, Tony, is they're generally on the tools. So they are an engineer, or they are a tech company, or they're a manufacturer, or they're a finance advisor, but they're on the tools. So they're doing the work with the clients, but they are also required to bring in some new business and optimize existing accounts. So we tend not to work with companies who have full-time sales teams. That's not the work that I want to do.
Excellent.
So our clients in common, they are, as I said, they're doing dual roles. They're on the tools servicing the clients, but they're also required to bring in some new business. They're not doing high volume. So they're not selling widgets where they have to do, 10 new clients a week. It's not like that, because our clients are also doing bigger deals. At the bottom end, the deals are worth tens of thousands of dollars. If not really, it's probably in the hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. So the 6 and 7 figure deals our clients are doing, which means these deals take time. There's complexity, there's changing decision makers, and there's many stakeholders. And the other thing our clients would have in common, which I have a chuckle at every time it comes my way, is I have people say to me, Tony, things like, "Oh, Julia, I don't think you can help us because we actually don't do sales. We don't sell anything." And I say, okay, you don't sell anything, you don't do sales. No, we don't do sales, Julia. We're a professional company. Oh, okay, so you don't do revenue. And they say, well, of course we do revenue. And I said, it's the same thing, actually. So what they mean is we don't have a sales team. We're not selling widgets. So the people we work with are doing bigger deals, which take time with more complexity, and they're on the tools. So they're servicing the client, but they're also required to bring in some new business.
That's fantastic. I really like this approach. Now, I've heard of this only once before with a company that realized that everyone from the moment the person who picks up the phone, that's the first person that you engage with.
Yeah.
But they don't have that skill set, right? They're not trained to. When they do sales training, it's the sales team that get the training.
Yeah.
But actually, there's this level of technical competency that exists in the technical team, but they don't actually have the people skills, right? Because they were promoted on the basis of their technical competence, but they haven't really done the other stuff. So I think that's a really good sweet spot there. I saw something recently again that I love. I wrote this down. You said hope is a horrible strategy.
Hope is a terrible strategy. Yes.
Tell us more.
Yes. You can't bank luck or hope.
Yeah.
It's just not a thing. And so, I talk about this in the context for those watching this replay. I'll do an action in a moment that I'll explain. But for those watching, this is the equivalent of maybe doing some marketing or doing some networking and then this. And for those that are on audio only, I'm closing my eyes and squinting, and I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that someone comes my way and wants to buy from me. You can't bank this. So when we can put a repeatable sales process into a business that helps them to convert more qualified contracts, you take the luck and hope out of it and you put predictability in.
You put predictability in. How do you do that?
So when you have a repeatable sales process, what it does, it allows companies to actually combat inconsistent revenue. It allows them to work with more qualified opportunities. It allows them to then know when these are going to land so that they have a continually full pipeline so that they can accurately forecast the business to make investment decisions.
You're a really gregarious, bubbly personality. And so is this something that you're naturally like this, I presume? So you haven't had to put a lot of effort into learning how to do that. How do you... When you're maybe connecting with people who are natural introverts and they look at you and they think, well, I can't be like you, Julia. Look at you. You're just so confident. You're bubbly. That's not me. How do you communicate with these kind of individuals?
Yeah, a part of the work that I talk about with all our clients, and to go even back a step, Tony, one of the reasons I don't work with companies who have full-time sales teams is because mostly, it's a gross generalization, Most companies that have full-time sales teams are full of extroverts. And I don't like working with teams of people like that. The people that we work with, it's not unusual that we've got most people that are introverted. And so I get to teach them that personality types, and when I say personality types don't matter, I mean that you don't need to be a raging extrovert. Also, I'm very clear with my clients, this is not about turning you into me. There are parts of me that would grind people's gears. I'm not for everybody. No one's for everybody. No one is for everybody.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what I talk about is that process beats personality. So again, this repeatable process that we work with our clients on, it works for the most introverted of people because what it does, it allows you to shift the conversation so that you don't have to be the hero. You don't have to think of really clever, witty things to say. You get to shift your conversation to make the other person the hero by asking them good questions.
I mean, in my brain, I'm thinking I've got like 10 questions to ask at the same time.
Oh,
But,
go,
so
ask them all. I
yeah,
love
yeah.
this stuff.
So, but I'm going to ask you: you seem to me to be a personality that is altruistic in the way you approach business. You give. I think I read a recent post where you just connect people for no particular reason other than you can. They're in your network, and I think you invited some people to say, hey, who have you connected with? And there were some really great comments there. And so the question is, when you actually was going to ask you this in the comments, but I want to do it today. When you put people together and you make introductions, do you also follow up to see how that how that connection went, or you literally just do it? So you have no.
Well, okay, so there's probably two answers. No, I don't follow up, but the other side of it is I'm pretty much I'm a keep in toucher. So I have a pretty big network, which has been created by design because when I left corporate, Tony, I had no one. When you work corporate and you get paid to be an employee, you just get paid, and you can be mediocre and you will still get paid.
Yeah.
And I worked for in some very senior roles. I didn't need a network. I realised how much that was necessary when I went out on my own. So over the years, I have purposely gone out of my way to network. Now, I will caveat this by saying, yes, I am definitely more extroverted than introverted. I don't like networking. If anyone said to me, hey, Julia, do you want to come to an event with me where there'll be like 100 people in the room and you'll know nobody?
Right.
Who wants to do that? So that's the last thing I feel like doing. But I have recognised that if you're in business these days, Tony, if you're not talking to people and you're not meeting people, you're not doing business. So I don't like networking, but I recognise that it's essential, it's necessary. And one of the benefits that I've come to, I don't love it, but I have come to enjoy parts of it. And over the years, I've tried many places where I wouldn't hang out again, but I now know I'm more strategic with it now. But yes, I do love hooking up good people. So when you say, do I follow them up? No, I don't. So I don't drop a call and say, hey, Tony, how did you go with Mohammed that I introduced you to? I don't do that. But it would be by chance, I would probably talk with you and or Mohammed in the next weeks or month anyway. And you'll say, oh, Julia, I had to catch up with Tony and he was really great. So but and I'm very clear. I say I'm just hooking up some good people. There's nothing in it for me other than just hooking up good operators. So if you are in business these days, you should be doing the same thing. It's great to introduce people. It's really, really great. So if anyone listening, increase your network, and it's just wonderful to be able to help people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good tip. Helping other people. I think there's no better way to increase your network and your net worth by just being of service to other people.
And everyone needs to know someone. Everyone needs someone. So if I ring you and say, hey, Tony, I've got a really good person in my network who does X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
There's every chance you'll say, oh, I would like an introduction. Would that be okay? So everyone loves to meet a person who's recommended. Yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, I think you took networking to another level. You did it on steroids. I think so tell us about your road trip around the States.
Oh my goodness! I wonder where that was going.
That was fantastic to watch.
So I've recently just come back from the States where I got to spend some time with some of my my good friends in the negotiating space, and these people are hostage, crisis, or terrorist negotiators, former or current. or the negotiation specialist. So I just have a passion for this topic, and I believe, Tony, these are not special occasion skills; these are everyday skills, and I do genuinely believe that negotiation skills can save the world. So I had people asking me, is this tour to the US, is this a book tour? No. Am I expanding my company or my services or my team there? No. It was simply a selfish tour where I went to further my skills and to have great conversations with wonderful people who were in the negotiation arena. So I learned a lot. I got to connect with some wonderful people who are great friends of mine. And it was just a once in a lifetime trip.
Yeah. I don't think it was selfish at all. I'm sure the people you met gained just as much as you did from meeting with you in person.
But I knew these people anyway,
Right.
from online over the years, but to be able to spend time over a couple of days and,
Sure.
break bread with people and we'll have a walk, like that's stuff you just can't place
Priceless.
enough value on. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
wonderful.
So pitch for profit. Let's tell me about this book. Tell me about, before we get into the meat of the book, just the journey. What problem were you trying to solve that you observed? And you talk about processes. What's the journey into the book? And then maybe let's talk about who's the book written for and how it's moving.
Yeah, well, I was approached by a publisher, or probably about a year ago now, and I remember asking and having a conversation with them, Tony, and I did say to them, "Look, there are a billion sales books around. Why is this one going to be any different?" And they said to me, "Yes, Julia, there are a billion sales books around, of many of which we have published ourselves." So they said, "This one is different because we have never come across someone who teaches a repeatable sales negotiation program based on a trust-first approach, based on humility, where the relationship matters." So what I do with clients, I'm a one-trick pony. I don't do a million things where I have a menu of, I can do this or I can do that. I do one thing. I teach repeatable and customizable sales process. That's it. So I already had the book because that's all I do for a living. I just implement and this program is called the Infinite Sales System. So I implement this day in, day out to all sorts of different companies. So for me, the book was already written. The book is the generic version of the program, and companies hire me to then customize it to their process themselves. And so how it came about was we had some conversations with the publisher, and they said, no, this would be different because it's not based on tips and tricks. It's based on a system or a process. And so they thought that was very powerful. I felt very humbled to be to hear that, and so we agreed to a contract, and the book came out in August this year. The three principles to this program, though, the Infinite Sales System, are qualify, convert, and follow up. Qualify, which helps our clients get in front of, and the reader of the book, get in front of more of the right kinds of opportunities. Not just anyone. No one wants to sell to anyone. We want to sell to more of the right kinds of people. Second principle is convert, which is what to say and what to do when you get the coffee meeting. What to say and what to do if you're in a competitive space so that you can stand out. It's how do you tackle the price conversation. It's how do you explain what you do in a way that makes people sit up and pay attention and increase their sense of urgency to act. And the third principle it's based on is follow up, which is how do you play the long game in a value-adding way that you're not annoying.
That explanation, I mean, it's on my book list anyway, but that explanation has kind of boosted up into the red zone, priority zone.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Just the way you explained it. So obviously you're walking your talk. You explained it very clearly, the problem it's solving and who it's helping. Give us one tip, just one tip, a little snapshot into something that we can say, right, this is something I want to try tomorrow morning and see if it works.
One of the most powerful parts of a sales interaction you can have is a line that I have had clients say to me, if you should get merchandise, Julie, you should get shirts and T-shirts. There will not be shirts and T-shirts. But if I did, this might be one line from it, which is never finish a meeting until you've booked the next meeting. So this allows you to shorten that decision-making cycle and continue momentum on the conversation. The opposite of that is saying, so Tony, it's been great to chat with you today. I'll send you a proposal on my services and it would be nice to chat to you again sometime. And you say, yeah, Julie, that sounds great. I look forward to receiving that.
Yeah.
That's the opposite. So what you're doing then is this is the hope and luck strategy, which, referred to 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Terrible strategy. So when we want to never finish a meeting before booking the next meeting. So I would say instead, hey, Tony, it's been great to share some information with you today and learn about your company. I'm going to send you a proposal. I just want to put my thinking cap on and think about something that I can send to you that would be meaningful for you. Today is Tuesday. Tony, I'll look forward to giving that to you. You'll have it by tomorrow afternoon. You know what we should do though, is let's pop something in the calendar, maybe for the week after, just a 15-minute conversation, just to keep the momentum going and just so I can see how things are sitting with you. Hey, I've got my calendar handy right here. Do you want to grab yours out as well?
Great tip.
So we never finish the meeting until we booked the next meeting.
Great tip. I was talking with a company just yesterday, actually, and we were doing a workshop around what are they going to be unreasonably good at, right? Just choose something that you can just be ridiculously, obsessively good at. And they chose follow-up. They said, we want to become a company that are obsessively, unreasonably, phenomenally great at follow-up.
Ooh.
And so this is a great tip. Because one of the things that came up was this, and we asked, well, how many times when you finish a call do you actually schedule the next call? And they kind of looked at each other and was, yeah, but it's a bit embarrassing because maybe they don't really want to, call to schedule a call the next time. Well, if that's the case, then maybe you never really had a client in the first place, right? Or you never had a potential. So this is a great tip. And I strongly recommend to our listeners, you go out and grab hold of this book. Julia, how can our listeners find you?
So I have a website. That's just a fancy brochure, though. My website is juliaewert.com. Where I'd love our listeners to find me is really on LinkedIn. You'll find me there. I'm the most live on there. I also share lots of skills and techniques because I genuinely want people to get better at this stuff. So my book is called From Pitch to Profit. I share a lot of that content on LinkedIn, so you can learn from me for free. And so LinkedIn is the place where I'd point people towards, and it's simply just my name, Julia Ewert.
Superb. And yes, I can be a testimony to that. I follow Julia. Her content is fantastic. I love the new look of your LinkedIn. It just looks fantastic. You look like a film star. So I strongly recommend people jump on and have a look at Julia's content. It is current and it's very, very relevant to the way in which we interact today. Julia Ewert, thank you very much for joining us at Empathy at the Table. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Tony. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed the conversation so much.
And